Right. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of my colleagues at the Trivedi Center for Political Data, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this talk on the news media and the role of TRPs. It's become a very banal thing to say that the media landscape in India has transformed deeply. In particular, the transformation of the role, the relationship between parties, the politics and media has also transformed, with political parties building their own modes of direct communication with voters. The old links of dependency of politics vis-a-vis media has sort of gone down, and that has enhanced a context of intense competition between a growing media landscape. And what's not always understood is, the mechanism through which that happened, and notably the role of TRPs. So we constantly hear that, the news is driven by TRPs and so forth. And obviously there has been, recent scandals, an ongoing scandal about the manipulation of TRPs. But in order to understand a little bit more the mechanics and what is at stake also with those mechanisms, we have two fantastic speakers, two household names who both in their own ways have specialized on the media. Vikram Chandra, of course, need really no introduction, former anchor at NDTV and founder of Editorji Technologies. Dr. Quraishi, known by all as Chief Election Commissioner, but has also served in his anterior career as a bureaucrat in communication, broadcasting, and media. And so we're really privileged to have both of you to shed some light on this complicated and important issue. The debate is going to be moderated by Maya Mirchandani, colleague and friend at Ashoka, and newly appointed faculty associate at TCPD. So we're very happy to also have you here in this quality, Maya. The rules of the talk are going to be the following. Our two speakers are going to make two short presentations, followed by a Q&A. The Q&A, we ask you to send your questions in writing using the chat box to either Priyamvada or Shoaib. And Shoaib will administer those questions to our speakers. So we have a little less than an hour to wrap this conversation. So without much further ado, I'm going to let, so what did we decide finally? Dr. Quraishi, are you speaking first, or is it Vikram talking?
I think Dr. Quraishi will speak first with his presentation. And then
all right, so Quraishi, the floor is yours for 10, 12 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Gilles, and thank you, Maya, and welcome Vikram to our family. Let me give you the perspective of TRP, because I'm an old victim of TRP fraud. I was DG Doordarshan in 2001 and 2, or was it 2 and 3, when we came across, and I'm going to share my experience with you and explain the problem. Next slide, please. Yeah. After the Mumbai expose on 8th of October, it has become a national news. But actually, the problem is 2 decades old. And as I mentioned, that how did we experience that we were being cheated and conned? That was the time in 2002 and 3, when 35 out of the 50 top programs in all homes included terrestrial homes, which means with that Kabutar antenna, as was popularly known, and cable and satellite homes together. When we had 35 out of 50 in those programs, how come we were shown as having 1.5 audience share of all the channels? Similarly, prime time DD News at 9 p.m., our share was 92%, whereas Aaj Tak was 4.5. But somehow they used to call themselves subsidies channels, and they proved to be subsidies. They pulled wool over everybody's eyes and proved themselves as they were the #1 channel, whereas they were, so far behind Doordarshan. Next, please. At that time, the people have forgotten, but I remember that there used to be two rating agencies, TAM, which is Television Audience Measurement, which was run by AC Nielsen, and INTAM, Indian National Television Audience Measurement, run by ORG Mark, two top research agencies of the country. And they were giving week after week different or totally opposite finding. And that is when TAM, the richer one, decided to buy INTAM, and they coined a very fancy term, single currency. And everybody was so fascinated by this term, even in Doordarshan. Oh, now we have a single currency. For me, the parallel which I used to give was, that was the time when terrorism in Mumbai was at its peak, when there was the gang of Dawood Ibrahim, and there was another chap called Gowli, and both of them were exposing each other, and the police had a field day. They were having success against both of them. Suppose they were to come together, become a single currency. That is the worst kind of most dangerous cartel. So it was cartelization of monopoly of the worst order, which was being very happily lapped up by everybody, including those who were victim of it, namely Doordarshan. Next, please. And those days, 2,000 meters were installed in 12 cities. And the debate used to be, how can you use the data from just 2,000 people meters and extrapolate it on such a large country? So that was one issue, and which is the debate which is still going on, whether 40,000 sample is good enough or not. To my mind, sample size and this whole thing is all humbug, and I'm going to prove to you that's all rubbish. We should not go into that. No, those meters were also only confined to 12 cities. There also there was a catch. We found that there was something which they could legally do, but that was unethical. Suppose Ludhiana was the city chosen for Haryana, Punjab and Himachal. Now, and I get to know, as an advertiser, as a broadcaster, I get to know. So what I'll do is I'll do my advertising in Ludhiana so much that everybody will probably genuinely switch on to my channel, and then that would be extrapolated on everybody. So even the 12 cities should have been kept secret, but they were known to the people who were interested in it. Now, the heart of the fraud is people meter. And I dare say that not many people know about the people meter. Unless you have seen people meter, unless you see how it operates, you really are in no position to discuss the issue. I am, because when I started investigating, I got one installed in my office in Doordarshan. And let me explain to you what it is. Somebody, this guy came to you. I used to have a Sony television in my office. They removed the back cover, and then there is a set-top box like we have on television. The people meter is like a set-top box. From there, two wires, two cables went to the television, and on the tuner, they were soldered. Now, the moment a screwdriver touches your TV, you lose your warranty. Who would allow who would like to lose the warranty of their television just for a national interest that you want to be a volunteer to give you audience habits? So now, secondly, what you can find out from the people meter is which channel is being turned on, but who is watching and what time. This is where the catch is. For that there is a remote control like you have in the TV. But here the buttons are assigned to like the husband has his number one, wife is number two, son, daughter, the servant, they all have a button. And what is expected of you? As you enter the room, you press your assigned button, and when you leave the room even for 5 minutes, you are supposed to honestly press that button. I tried to do it for a day and a half, and then I got mad, and then after that it stopped bothering. Who in his senses, even the poorest of the poor, will do this stupid exercise of switching the button on and on, all for national interest, for no commercial interest as they claim. So that is where the catch is, and which is why when we are looking for way forward and solution, I'll come back to this. Second very critical issue is that this whole exercise is supposed to monitor the viewing habits of all classes of people. Now, SEC, socio-economic classes, classification of A to E. A are the richest, E are the poorest. A, B, C, D, E. Now, would any one of you, the audience here, would like to install, monitor, to install this meter in your home? No, it is only poorest of the poor who are willing to do it for 400 rupees a month. So, and how can you gauge my viewing habits without installing a meter in my house? And which rich man would install this meter? So it is total humbug. It's all total fraud. Now, what also happened those days that addresses of the homes where these meters were installed got known. They got published in a newspaper. Oh, there was a hue and cry, and they said, no, we'll try and keep it secret in future. And but the fact that it was so easy as that was revealed. Next, please. Now, I mentioned to you. Now, how is the data collected from this? I got this thing installed in my office. Now, a guy used to come twice a week to take out the data card. So I made friends with him. Initially, he denied that any money is given to the homes where these meters are installed. But after a few samosas and a few cups of tea, he told me the truth. He says, we don't pay cash, but we do give them like a pressure cooker or a dinner set. And later on, we got to know that they even install it, they give them a new television, that use your new television for whatever you're watching, but use your old television just to do what we tell you. Keep a particular channel on all the time, which is what was exposed in Mumbai. So next, please. Now, what are the implications? It was a double fraud. One is the financial dimension of it, because at that point it was 8,000 crore of TV ad spend. Now it is 27,000 crores. So all channels are eyeing that 27,000 crores. And how do they allot this money? On the basis of the eyeballs which they capture. So, and second issue was, once the channel is declared, top rating channel, most viewed channel, there is a bandwagon effect that everybody then wants to switch on that channel. And that is how you are stealing audiences, which is what a national fraud is. Next, please. Now, when I was making a lot of noise, Mr. K.S. Sharma, who was the CEO of Prasar Bharati, he arranged a meeting for me in Mumbai with 10 top advertisers. Advertisers mean the owners, Hindustan Lever Limited, Colgate, all these people whose money was involved. Not the media buyers. Media buyers were their employees or their ad agencies. They can be subject to corruption, but it was their money. And there were about 10 of them. I asked them 3-4 questions. I said, are you not bothered about your money? Is your money going to the right channel where the eyeballs are? Or you're being conned? So secondly, do you know how the data is collected? They knew nothing. I said, have you seen a people meter? They had not seen. I said, will you volunteer to install one in your house? Surely they said no. I said, this is the situation. At least you should examine clinically the figures which are being bandied about and give it to the channel which really are have the eyeball. And why I was so confident, because that was the time when 52% of India had no cable and satellite, which means 100% of that half the country was eyeing Doordarshan. And okay, in the cable and satellite home, our share may have been very poor. It used to be say 2%. Now 100% plus 2%. So 102% out of 200 is 51%. With 51% audience share, we were getting pittance because we were regarded as a useless channel. So which is what I questioned. I said the audience is here, and not all the thing which are selling to rich people, the rural areas and others, the hair oil, toothpaste, toothbrush, all these things are going to rural areas. So how can you be so stupid and blind? But they were. Next, please.
Sir, if I don't mean to interrupt you, but you have 2 more minutes.
Yeah, I have 2 more minutes. Yeah,
okay.
Right. There was also a question of conflict of interest, because we realized that AC Nielsen and Star Network had a grandfather organization called WPP, which is the wire and paint company originally. So there was a conflict of interest, and here also you will see Mindshare is one of the companies. Mindshare was a major media buyer. Now, major media buyer would be buying a Star Plus, because Star Plus was owned by their own company. So that is why, most of us, Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Gayavati was also manipulated. That's what we thought, because this is how it was being manipulated. Next, please. Now, matter reached Parliament, and the INB minister also made comment about its unreliability. And a committee under Mr. Amit Mitra, who was Secretary General of FICCI, was constituted, and TRAI was asked to make guidelines for rating agencies. Next, please. And that was the time when Vikram's NDTV also went to court, about which he will tell you in detail. And that is how BARC was born, which is a Broadcast Audience Research Council, in July 2010. Ministry notified guidelines 3 years later, and BARC was accredited in 2015. And from then onward, it became the exclusive rating agency, and it named people meters as barometers, not as barometers, but barometers, just to indicate it is their baby. Next, please. But let me explain to you that BARC, coming in of BARC, did not change the system. It's only the ownership which changed. From TAM, it was the BARC which was doing, but the systems continue to be the same. They had a couple of research agencies, mainly Hansa, which was an international agency, but they were also being conned, and for in this case also their employee cheated, not they themselves. And earlier in Gwalior also similar case had happened. I don't know the fate of that case. Next, please. Now, present scenario, this is 40,000 meters, and they say, sample size. Now, if the whole people system is based on fraud, so 2,000 meters committing fraud, and 40,000 meters committing fraud, and 4 lakh meters committing fraud remains the constant factor. So therefore, this is not the answer. And the number of cities, you may increase the number of cities so long as the fact that people meter is not operational, because who is watching? No, what is being watched is easy. Now, with direct-to-home television, it is very easy. Whichever the channel you switch on, it can get registered. But who is sitting in the room? It can only happen in Russia when you're watching the TV. Actually, it's the TV which is watching you. Now, how will you know who is watching the television in the room? So that is impossible. Therefore, there's all this sampling and technology and all that is all rubbish. This we should go beyond this. Have to think out of the box. Next, please. Now, way forward. As I mentioned, now DTH will is part of the solution, because it will record which channel is being watched. But and my solution is maybe just qualitative research, that somebody comes to me once in a year, and which are and talks to my family, which are the channels I watch. Women कौन सा channel देखती हैं, what time of the day, children के favorite क्या है, ये सारी चीजें करें. The only qualitative research which I learned in social marketing. That's the only way, but people meter will not give you the answer, because it is not installed in A, B, C, D, E classes. And secondly, no person on earth, even the poorest, will not operate it honestly the way it is meant to be. 20 times, 100 times a day, you keep switching the button, nobody is going to do it. Next, please. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Quraishi, for that actually fantastic overview of the challenges of what we're actually talking about when we talk about the concept of television rating points. And I want to bring Vikram Chandra in here. Vikram, a friend, former colleague, former CEO of NDTV, and really at the forefront, Vikram, I remember of our conversations in the newsroom way back from 2010, when actually this whole idea of, overriding TAM and bringing in a new system was being discussed very avidly. But also, I think what's important, and what was important for us at that time as well, was this question about whether television rating points, which become an important metric for advertisers with their budgets to determine how they want to spend their money on sort of consumer products and their advertising, but how much of it was for general entertainment channels, for sports channels, how much of it was for news networks. And the corollary question to that really is, when news is something which is essentially meant to be a public good, should news channels also have been subjected to this metric of measurement through television rating points, which ended up skewing, even headline agendas?
Right, Maya. Thanks a lot for that. And yes, you're right. We did discuss this subject quite often in the past. Um, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the news because, look, let's face it, whatever the issues are around the TRP system, and Dr. Quraishi is completely right. We've known the system is completely rotten for years. It's been 8 to 9, maybe 10 years. We have known the system is completely rotten. And yes, there are all sorts of implications of that. Advertisers are perhaps advertising in wrong areas and the rest of it. But it is perhaps in news that the toxic effects of the TRP system are most clearly visible and are perhaps having the most lasting damage. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you what is at stake out here, and then we look at why the system is broken. India is in any case a somewhat different country when it comes to the news television, the television news market than many other countries in the world. Ratings don't necessarily matter that much in a country like America or wherever because news channels have multiple sources of revenue. You don't only depend on advertising, you get subscription money. Cable operators or DTH operators, all of you pay the cable operator pays the TV channel, and that's their steady source of revenue. So you can say, I'm going to do good quality, credible, balanced news. My subscribers will pay for it. That money will move into the TV channels. That's what should happen. In India, that doesn't happen and hasn't happened. And there are historical reasons. I can go into it in exhaustive detail if somebody wants to, but I won't subject it to you right now. Essentially in India, because there were analog systems and you could only have 30 channels, there were 400 channels trying to get inside, 150 of them were news channels. The balance of power was with the cable operators. So the cable operators, instead of paying television news channels to carry their content, would charge them carriage fees. They would charge them carriage fees. Now, a television news channel is paying for distribution instead of getting revenue from distribution. And that's one big piece of the puzzle when it comes to news. So now, television news channels have to entirely depend on advertising. That's their only source of revenue. And the money they get from advertising doesn't just have to pay for news gathering, it also has to pay for the carriage fees they're paying to cable operators. So advertising becomes all important. And then next part of the puzzle kicks in because that advertising is entirely driven by TRPs. Now, many people have tried for a long period of time, as Dr. Quraishi did from Doordarshan, others did. My former job when I was at NDTV, we used to also make efforts to talk to people about it and say, you know, you shouldn't necessarily be advertising. Certainly in areas like news, you shouldn't be advertising on the basis of TRPs. A consistent, very long effort was made. It resulted in a success in some areas where for things like Greenathon or Save the Tiger, advertisers came on and said, we'll give money which won't be linked to TRPs. But by and large, that's not the way it's worked. By and large, money has gone on the basis of TRPs. So you've got to get TRPs. Now you have a choice. If you're a news channel, you're not got subscription money, you've got to get advertising. Advertising comes from TRPs. Now you're in a dilemma. Do you chase those TRPs and whatever needs to be done to get the TRPs? Or do you say, fine, I won't make money, I'll make losses, I'll lay off people, maybe my business will go bust. That's the existentialist dilemma that has confronted, I think, news television organizations for a long period of time. And by the way, one of the reasons why I quit television news, I left NDTV in 2016 and I quit television news, and people said, why don't you set up your own TV news channel? I said, I'd rather die than do that, is because I knew that same existentialist channel is always going to be there. For anybody in the television news business, this is going to be your dilemma. You've got to chase the TRPs or you've got to say, I'm not going to get money. Now, when you're chasing the TRPs, the final piece of the puzzle when it comes to television news, how do you get the TRPs? Now, in an ideal world, you would say, oh, I will do good content and I will do good news and I will put out the good news stories and I'll have my reporters and they'll investigate and they'll do great news stories and I'll get TRPs from that and then everything else will follow. But that's not the way it works. Time after time, and not even getting into the fraud and other aspects that Dr. Quraishi was talking about, I'll refer to them very briefly. Set that aside. Time after time, we have seen that TRPs in the news business come not from doing good quality journalism, but from doing bad journalism quite often. You're biased, you shout at people, you make your guests shout at people, try and see if you can have Hindu Muslims shouting at each other, try and ideally get a tantrik to shout at somebody. And if the anchor shouting, that's the best of it all. That's wonderful. That's the way to go. That's where the TRPs come from. You may not like it, but that's where TRPs come from. Now, that's not entirely unusual. Even if you look at it when it comes to print publication and others in other parts of the world, tabloid content will always do not badly. I mean, if you're in England, the Sun may well get a higher circulation than the Telegraph will. In those places, the advertisers are somewhat perceptive and they say this is good quality and this is bad quality. In India, unfortunately, that doesn't happen. So tabloid works, yelling and screaming works. And last and finally, English news is where it is the worst. And I'll tell you why. Because remember the figures that we were just seeing from Dr. Quraishi, 40,000 people meters? 40,000 people meters in a country of 1.3 billion people. And those 40,000 people meters have to measure English content, Hindi content, Tamil content, Bengali content, Gujarati content, Assamese content, entertainment content, sports, everywhere. That's the way it is. How many houses do you think there are in India? And then there's a selection bias that Dr. Quraishi was saying. Let's say English-speaking viewers will say, I'm not going to put a people meter who's going to monitor this. I don't want you in my house. You're paying me 100 rupees or 200 rupees for this. It's not of interest to me. So that's that bias also. But by and large, maybe you have 100 boxes in India, 200, maybe if you're lucky, 300. Okay, fine, 300 boxes, which are measuring English news. Now, what's the danger with that? Two things happen. One, if your sample size is that small, it's very easy to manipulate. You manipulate 3, 4, 5 houses and you're done. That's it. If you can get 2 people or 3 people, and every time when you look at the entire data, you will see there are outliers. Certain channels are being watched. I mean, I'm talking in the days when I was still at NDTV, there were a couple of business channels. There would be 3 outliers who used to watch that channel 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week. And it happened to have a people meter in that house. Now, that was enough to move that particular television channel from number 3 to number 1. Because it's just such a small sample size. If somebody is watching it 24 hours a day, 365 days in a year, that's what we'll do with such a small bias. And that's really where things start to kick in. So that bias effect works. And the last thing that I really want to say is something else then happens. If you only have 100 or 200 homes in India, which are boxes in homes where the person really understands English. Now, let's say you're doing a discussion like this. So let's say I'm just doing a discussion on poverty in rural India, or foreign direct investment, or how do you reform the labor sector, or any such show, foreign policy, whatever it is. Maybe the 100 people who are really understanding English really well will be watching that, right? It's a possibility. Maybe a majority of them will watch it also. It's also a possibility. But let's say I don't do that. And instead I do a high-pitched show where I'm getting, Hindu and Muslim to scream at each other, or somebody to shout at Pakistan, or someone to do something really. Somebody has none of that. You just have the anchor or 2 guests yelling at the top of their voice and going red in their face and jumping up and down. Now, even if I don't understand English very well, I may watch that just for entertainment value, right? So now, how many people would watch that? Maybe 300, maybe 400 people in people meters. Now, that will drown out whatever's coming from the homes that are genuinely understanding this. And that is the reason why television news has gone in the path it has. That's the reason. It's not because anybody is decided to be evil or decided to do something. Maybe there's some of that also, manipulation, fraud, all of that. I'm 100% sure it is happening. And Dr. Quraishi is right. There was a lawsuit that was filed in 2004, 2005. Nielsen people were called in and showed that, look at this. There are 6. We can show you where the people meters are. This is not information that anybody should have. Why do people have this, and why do people have access to that? So I'm sure there's bad stuff and fraud happening. But even without that, even if you don't factor in fraud, the way the system is working, news television is going to continue to slide in the manner that it is. And that's sad. That's bad news for the industry. And that's why I quit, frankly.
Right.
I couldn't find a solution.
Vikram, I think I was out of there 6 months after you. So
yeah, that's probably the reason why you quit too.
Yeah, exactly. But I think if I can just sort of take this back to both you and Mr. Quraishi very briefly before we bring in questions, I'm going to give you all just about 30 seconds each to address this. This issue that was raised about the need for some kind of metric. Mr. Quraishi has talked about a qualitative survey. Do you think that's really feasible, sir? And to you, Vikram, I'll ask you the opposite question: is whether the DTH system is a way to actually address some of this. Mr. Quraishi, if you could just respond. Is a qualitative survey feasible? You're on mute, sir.
Yeah, I have said it very specifically that the people meter kind of rating is just not feasible. It is going to lead to more and more fraud. Therefore, we have to come out of it and look at alternative ways. And a qualitative survey, to my mind, is the only way, where depending on a meter which you have to press 100 times a day, is just not feasible, whether it is 40,000 sample or 4 lakh sample. So forget about it. We have to work on a different. Now, this one question which was asked by the Vikram also, when I had a meeting with these 10 top advertisers whose money we were all eyeing, I said, why are you not careful? He said, we have to go by some figures. I said, even if those some figures are fraud figures, are you okay? But their basic theme song was, there have to be some figures on which basis they may decide that this channel is doing well, let us put our money there. Now, we have to find an alternative way to satisfy them, which are the channels which are actually being viewed, and maybe what I propose and more people meter. Another possibility, which is again a via media, which could be that time and in time, the way they were giving different figures. So let us generate competition. So in every city, let there be at least 4 companies doing the same thing, similar thing, because they will be coming out with different figures. We can do aggregation and or let the advertiser decide which agency is doing well and whose figures I can trust, so that I start putting my money there.
Right. Okay, Vikram, just to take off from that, I mean, the question of having competition to BARC now, I don't know if that's going to create more confusion and more chaos, because people are going to say, well, we don't, in this sort of post-truth world that we in any case inhabit, where we say whose numbers do we trust, whose numbers do we go by, can aggregation be the answer? But I think the earlier question, and somebody, one of our participants, Mohit, is also asking that question. I mean, if we do need some kind of data, some kind of metric, can the DTH set-top box be that provider? Is it possible?
Maya, I spent 25 years in television news, right? If I thought there was a solution in television news, a feasible, likely solution in television news, given all the moving parts, I wouldn't have quit TV news, right? If I thought there was a path.
Right.
I don't believe there is a path. I don't believe there is a solution that is going to come in a hurry. I hate to sound pessimistic. Actually, it's not necessarily pessimistic, because I don't think it is required anymore. My view, the era of television is in any case fading. It's dying. It's passed on, right? It's now digital is the future. My own search for the last 4 years was with Editorji has been to say, how do you redefine the future of video news altogether? Why does it have to be a solution to television news, right? Why do you need the solution to be DTH or cable or that old 20th century? This is what television is. This is 2020. Find a 2020 solution, which means in any case, video is going to become OTT. In any case, video is going to become digital. Find the formats for that. So Editorji's basic thrust has been try and set up the Spotify of video news and information and do it there. Now, why is it different in digital? It's different in digital, Maya, because you don't have to use TRPs or sampling or anything else to try and tell you how many views you have. I can tell you sitting here right now that in the last 30 days, 46 million people saw XYZ Editorji videos. Now, if you ask me, substantiate that. I'll say, sure, here is the data. Here are the people. Here's the videos they watch. Here is where they watched it. This person watched this video in Kanpur. It's authenticated. It's factual. There's evidence to back it. If an advertiser comes and says, I want you to run so many ads, how many people saw my ad? We'll give them an audited number and say, this is where the ads are. Why do you need all of this? Why do you need TRPs? Why do you need TV?
Yeah. And I think that brings me to
this room. I mean, I'd love to hear back. How many people in this gathering that you have out here These are some of the brightest and best people in India because they're at Ashoka. How many of them actually watch television or watch TV news?
Well, that's a good question. I'll let some of them answer it. But if I were to hazard a guess, for the last few days, everyone is glued to some US television network on their laptop or their computer for a reason. But keeping that aside completely, taking off from your issue about the digital nature of our consumption and the platforms, Ananya is asking, news channels are not really competing with each other, but with Netflix and Amazon Prime. And he wants to know your thoughts on that. So I think, the point that you made about creating video content for a different kind of format and a different kind of platform, very differently from the kind of stuff that we're seeing on YouTube, which is essentially of a replication of the TV newsroom debate, which is now being put onto YouTube, and everyone thinks that's digital video content, which it isn't. So creating new formats, creating a new idiom entirely for the way broadcast news is consumed is the competition to television news, Netflix and Amazon.
Okay, so I mean, I could carry on this for half an hour, so please stop me at the appropriate time. But in a nutshell, the answer is no. I mean, you're not seeing news on Amazon or on Netflix right now. And the problem with digital video news, if you ask me, and this is my view primarily, is that most people are not putting out the right form factor. What are you doing? A lot of the time when people are watching video news on their mobile phones or on a connected device, somewhere, you're putting the same television news channel and you're saying, I'm watching the TV news channel live. What's the point of that? That same garbage that you're running away from on television, you're now saying, I'm going to watch that garbage on my mobile phone. Live news channel on your mobile phone with 30 minutes of advertising and yelling and screaming. Seriously, why are you doing that? Doesn't make sense. That's why people don't do it. It doesn't make logical sense. So live news on your mobile phone, this is a connective device. It knows who you are. It can personalize the news. It can give you the sort of information that you need. All of that is possible. And if you're watching a live news channel on this, it's like owning a Ferrari and trying to get a buffalo to pull it. It makes very little sense. So what the norm has been till now is people have said, no, we won't do this. We'll give you video on demand. And in news business, that means you've given people 10, 20, 30 little news stories, and you said, go find the news for yourself. Go tap on a video and watch the news. Now, if I don't know what the news is, I don't know what stories are happening, and how are you going and finding the news and tapping it? And it's a pain. You can tap on an icon and sit back and watch it if it's a Netflix series, which you're watching for 30 minutes. Who's got the time and the effort or the patience to go and tap on 30 different tabs to get 30 different news stories? It's the form factor. It's the user experience. Video news digital video news hasn't yet solved the form factor question. When you solve this form factor question, and that's essentially what we are trying to do. We are trying to follow the music industry by saying television news is like radio. Digital video news today is like cassettes and CDs. You can find the story you want, but it's a pain to do it. But in music, the answer came from Spotify and Apple Music and Ghana, where AI and other things came and created playlists for you.
Right.
That's the way I think the answer will be in the future.
Okay, there are a lot of questions for you, Vikram, but before I come back to them, Mr. Quraishi, I want to just segue a little bit from the specific sort of formats and metrics and measurement question to this issue of advertisers and the content of news television and whether TRPs are going to dictate that content. Vikram made the point that TRPs were sort of telling television news channels to bring in shouting matches into the studio, to bring in sort of a conflict into the studio. And if the anchor got into the game and flung a glass of water at someone, so be it, even better. But there are also two issues with that. One is that we're also seeing now people like Rahul Bajaj, corporate India saying that we're not going to give our advertising to certain TV channels who, are sort of not keeping the decorum of what a newsroom and news debate should be. That's one. The second is the overwhelming dependency now of television, not just television, the news industry per se, and their need for revenue from advertising on the government as the primary advertiser. So whether or not you have TRPs, you're now caught in this battle between what are the numbers saying and what does our advertiser want, because it seems to be there's only one advertiser left.
Yeah. Quite right. The dependence on advertisement is the key, and perhaps the solution is that we sit with the advertiser, the people who own the money, whose money we are all eyeing, and we have to sit with them. And BARC was supposed to be a solution because it is industry-led. The owners of these companies, some of them are on that board, and it is their concern. And they are all bright people. They are running a big industrial empire. Can't they solve this very basic problem, which either shows that they're not intelligent enough or they're not bothered enough? So that is the matter of concern. And one question which I would have for Vikram, that while people are moving away from news channels, and that's a very good news if this is true, whether it can be substantiated by the advertising, amount of advertising going down, which was going to the news channels, so that will be the proof. Now, similar competition may start on YouTube and these private channels also. And instead of 400 news channels, there will be 4,000 YouTube channels. And to get the eyeballs, they will try and do the same kind of a drama, natak, and shouting matches and singing matches. There will be a Sudarshan TV, and there will be, then we have on the other hand, the wire. How do we take care of that eventuality happening there also?
Right.
And
okay.
now, second,
Yeah.
when you said now the government, this actually adds another dimension. On one hand, government is another advertiser, and another advertiser also has the same interest, who offers them more eyeballs. Now, in this case, what is happening, which is more dangerous, because of the government, to please the government, a particular political line is being touted by all these channels, which is what is extremely dangerous for the nation.
Okay, that's true. I mean, Vikram, there are lots of questions for you. Some of them I'm going to club together because there's questions from Arito Sarka, from Karthik Sundar, from Mohit as well. And they're actually talking about similar things. One is that, is there a generational divide between those who are consuming news on television and those who are not anymore? Because we talk about digital penetration in India and internet penetration and mobile technology penetration and people using their device. Is that an age specific thing? The other question is that, do you see other live stream platforms in a sense fill in the kind of gap that, you know, when we sit down and watch a news channel for a breaking news live event unfolding, now there are other live stream platforms that are doing that. So will that lead to some kind of combination or competition?
So on the age thing, I don't think, okay, look, let me, first of all, many people are going to try and look for solutions to what's happening, right? And nobody really knows. Transparently, upfront, obviously, a lot of what I am saying and a lot of what I'm talking about is from the specific point of view of what we are trying to find as a solution when it comes to Editorji, right? But that's based on what I think the answer will be, and we're all struggling around this. So I want to give that disclaimer to everyone, right? So that's keep that in mind. To my mind, the age issue is not necessarily going to be the major fact, because what we are trying to do is make it really simple. Now, what you said, what Dr. Quraishi was also saying, multiple TV channels all over YouTube. How are you going to find it? You know, why do people switch on television news channels right now? Because on the digital formats, it's tough to find the news for yourself. How do you find it? How do you go? You're going to go and search for 30 stories. You're going to go through Daily Hunt and go through 5,000 providers and find who's going to do it. How do you do it? It's that mechanism. You know, when I was setting up, the viewers may be interested in this, or the people out there may be interested in this. When I was wanting to set up Editorji, I went to San Bruno. I met the YouTube guys, right? The head of YouTube, and I said, what do you think about news? And he said, not that many people are actually watching news on YouTube. I said, yeah, your form factor is bad. And then the discussion that happened with him was actually very revealing. I said, how does somebody find a news story? I want to know what's the news right now. How do I find it? He said, very simple. The person should open YouTube, type the name of the story that they want, and they will find the story. And I said, that's not going to work, because if you have picture a lady in Gadchiroli, or when you're talking about the age factor, picture somebody who's maybe 85 or 90. Look at the other way. Somebody's 85, not that familiar with technology. You're going to say, go to YouTube, go to digital formats and type in the story that you want and it will come up, or set up an RSS feed, right, with preferred partners and they will give you the video that you want. Who's going to do this? Who's going to do this? No one's going to do this. So to me, the answer came in simplicity. Simplicity, make it really easy. One touch, you tap that button and it gives you the news. You have something on your desk like an Alexa and you say, Alexa, what's the news? And Alexa should tell you what the news is. And it should ideally say, hi Maya, here's your news.
Right.
Dr.
I mean,
Quraishi, this is news that could be of interest to you. That's what it should say, and it should be simple to use. And if you succeed in that and you make it simple to use, actually the elderly will use it first before the young people will, because the young people already know how to do it.
But Vikram, if I can just sort of be a little devil's advocate over here, it also begs the question. I mean, you are running Editorji and your news sense is impeccable and your editorial leadership is impeccable. But if we are now dependent on an algorithm to kind of point us to what we want to see, in a sense, is that not replicating the problems of TRPs in television? And just as another corollary to that, because there are lots of questions coming in, is what I asked Mr. Quraishi as well about the need for the metric when it comes to news. I mean, we've seen now corporate advertisers say that it doesn't matter what the TRPs are, they're not going to advertise on a particular channel that sort of promotes a particular kind of conflict or social tension or whatever it is. They're going to stand back from that kind of news. Who will decide what the news is in this sort of hybrid landscape?
So I leave Dr. Quraishi because he's had the conversation with the advertisers and maybe he'll be able to talk about that. I don't know what the advertisers are going to do and what the revenue is going to do. I do have a very strong opinion on the algorithm, right? And the question of humans and algorithms. So 2.5 years ago, how many years has it been now? 3 years ago, when I was starting to say, oh, how is this going to work? I was all excited by AI, right? The algorithms will decide the news stories and they will show it to people. And we built the most, I hate to sound like Trump, but we built the most beautiful algorithm, right? Which was absolutely perfect and would give people exactly what news they wanted to see. We built it and then we smashed it. And the reason we smashed it is very clear if you watch Social Dilemma, which I'm sure many of you have. The problem with the algorithm is that it's too good. It will show you the news that you want to see. And that's what's happening with all algorithms. Facebook shows you what they think you want to see. So does Google, so does Apple. All the algorithms are showing you the news that you want to see. The problem with that is that it is painting you more and more and more into ideological echo chambers. Look at America. That's not just an Indian problem. Look at America. You probably have a situation where Trump supporters and Biden supporters do not basically agree on what reality is anymore. They're not talking the same language. They could be speaking, they could be Klingons and humans, right, for all you know, and both will disagree as to who the Klingon is out there. So they're not speaking the same language. And that's because they're being fed by algorithms which are reinforcing their worst biases. So we created the algorithm and then we broke it because we said, no, we will try and make a hybrid thing where there's some news that we think you should see. We editors, I mean humans, human editors think you should see. Some news is stuff that the algorithm says that this person should be shown, and you do a blend of that and you try and show it. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. It will take us a couple of years, maybe 3 years to really build it out. But that's the path I think we need to take. Now, what advertisers will make on it, well, Dr. Quraishi will be talking to some of them. Maybe he'll be able to tell us.
Dr. Quraishi, do you want to just tell us about that as well? And then we'll ask the couple of last comments and final comments, but last questions and final comments. But this issue of, you alluded to it about sitting down with advertisers and having a conversation with them. We've seen some people take the lead in that, but it kind of means that there's less money coming in for certain kinds of channels. I mean, you and I may, in our own private universe, agree that may not be a bad thing. But broadly, if advertisers start also picking and choosing by a different metric, what are the revenue models you see for you? And I'm asking you because you were DG Doordarshan, you were former chief election commissioner as well. What do you see as the value of a news channel and the revenues that are required for news gathering in today's media landscape? Because it's, as Vikram pointed out, in the United States, for example, Democrats and Republicans don't even agree on what reality is. And we're heading down that same path. And news channels, which are meant to reflect reality, are kind of becoming, pawns in this game.
My conversation with the advertisers made it very, very clear that they do need some figures to go by because they need eyeballs. They are not bothered about India's politics and what is happening and socio-economic consequences of whatever is happening. They need the audience, and of course they look for the appropriate audience. For instance, if they have a product for women, so they want to see what is the program which women are watching and at what time of the day. So they do need some figures. Now, how scientific are those figures? It was for them. Now, BARC is adequately represented by the industry, those advertisers. What are they doing? I would like to question. I would be very happy if BARC invites me or this committee of Prasar Bharati, which has gone into it. To my mind, it is too official a committee and not senior enough. But anyway, that committee, I would like to sit with them. Discuss this issue because we have to create an alternative. And what I had alluded to do, perhaps that is where the solution lies. They want figures. So let us give them figures through qualitative survey research route, which will be more honest and more reflective. Because as I said, rich people will not install people meter. My viewing habit you will never know except through a social qualitative social marketing research, but not through a people meter because I will not install one. You will not install one. But we want to know what you're watching so that I can direct my advertising to you. So second is, of course, the interim. That is interim. At least restart the competition. Because the competition, of course, is the basic principle of capitalism. So there used to be competition, which was giving us results. And that was ended. And instead of coming down heavily on it, people started celebrating it as a single currency.
Right. Okay. Vikram, the bunch of questions around media ethics, which I'm going to direct to you. Students are asking, Aniket is asking, Shagun Rungta is asking, Shrishti Agarwal, bunch of them are asking questions on, and Basim too from the Trivedi Center, on whether the algorithm is essentially ending up giving you your echo chamber, and is the echo chamber a problem when you're not entirely confident of the veracity of some of the information coming your way? Is it an idealistic thing? Should there therefore be some sort of a statutory body that looks at digital news content as well, and if so, how can you sort of insulate that from government pressure? And then finally, I think Gilles asking, Gilles, I'll let you ask your question to Vikram directly when we get back, but let him answer these and then I'll hand over to you.
Look, I don't think you should ever leave anything entirely to an algorithm. That's one of the lessons that we have learned. How do we deal with the problems of fake news or non-verified news or picking it up everywhere? The answer that we reach, and by the way, everything which I'm saying is not something that we emerged from. This has really been 3 years of trying to figure out, playing around with AI and hybrid systems and seeing how you get the right answers. The answer that we seem to have converged around is, we don't take too much stories or too many stories onto the platform. In fact, we don't take any stories onto the platform which are not verified. Editorji's own team does about 170 to 180 stories a day. They're all 20-second stories. You don't need that many people to do 20-second stories. So those 20-second stories are factoids. One of the big problems in the news, I think, is how do you separate opinion from facts? So our answer is, you put together 170, 180 factual stories. They're all factual snippets, right? And you allow then the algorithm to assemble them in a certain manner. Now, two things happen. So we do about 170, 180 stories, and then there are select partners who are trusted partners whose content we have a certain amount of reliability on, and they can also come in and upload their stories and the rest of it. What we allow people to do is, now two things happen. One, the algorithm stitches that together on the basis of two parameters. One, there's a human parameter. These are the stories that we think as human editors you should see. If Biden's about to win the American election, we're able to show it to you. We don't care if you don't think American elections are important. We will show you those stories. You don't like it, tough, don't watch. But we're going to show you those stories. Similarly, we will try and show you stories from both sides of the spectrum, not just one side of the spectrum that says only reinforces your stuff. So if there's something bad that is happening in a state run by a political party that you like, we'll still show it to you, right? Because we think it's important. So that's how we've tried to deal with that individual part of the problem. What was the other thing which was there?
I think on the regulatory body, the need
Yeah,
for...
so I am in principle never in favor of any government being given the chance or the power to regulate the news, because you know what that will lead to, man.
We're already dealing with some parts of that kind of regulation.
You're already seeing what's happening with the government regulating, right? If anything, you have to go the other direction. That look at the amount of power now that governments have been given over journalists. I think the events of the last 2-3 days have only highlighted it. Central governments, state governments, whoever you want, any government which doesn't like what a journalist is saying and doing, they can file an FIR against you, they can hold you away, they can arrest you, and it doesn't matter who the hell you are, it can happen. And let's not, as we've just seen, it's not just one side which does it, it's both sides or 3 sides or every side. It's a very scary route down which we are going, because everyone's going to learn their lessons from all the things that we have been seeing. And you're going to soon have a situation where somebody writes stuff that the BJP doesn't like, fine, they're going to have FIRs filed against them and they'll be arrested in Delhi. If somebody writes something that the BJP doesn't like, which the Shiv Sena doesn't like, well, you know, you're seeing it. Write something which the Congress doesn't like in Punjab, you'll see it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we are seeing it. And I think this is a constant question that kind of comes out. And on the regulation question, the thing is, there are industry ostensibly autonomous regulatory bodies. I mean, we have the Press Council of India, we have the National Broadcast Standards Association. But again, I think the crisis of credibility is so deep that everybody is being forced to, try and sort of fight and defend their versions of the truth. And I think that's essentially the core of the problem where we are at. And I think with that, Gilles, it's a good segue into your question for Vikram. So I'll let you ask it and then we can take final comments.
Okay, thank you. And thank you both to Dr. Quraishi and Vikram. So Vikram, 2 quick thoughts and questions. One of the main issues that news channels that run with integrity have is that they have to compete with competitors that do not abide by the same ethical rules and who can engage into the sensationalism and the tantrics on screen and everything. So how is it going to be different on a digital space? And also I was struck by something you said, that you basically design an algorithm or a system that gives people access to the news that they want. But what about, there's a difference between the news that people want to see and the news that people need to see. And the job of an editor consists in sort of combining the two, right? If you were to do a survey about, how many people want to watch, news, what's happening in Kashmir, and that's not an endearing story about Jawan's bravery, probably not a lot of people today would want to see that news, but perhaps they need to see that news. So how do you guarantee that inconvenient information and news gets also diffused?
The answer is, I don't know. And that's really the open-ended question, right? What I think a lot of what we've been trying to do is say, okay, look, let's try and find a solution to this. Let's try and find an answer, right? You show people a little bit of the news that they should see, show them some of the news that they would like to see, get AI to combine it both, make it into a simple form factor and put it out there, right? And say that, look, guys, this is what you will get. You spend 5-6 minutes, you'll get 30 stories, you'll get the news that you should see and the news that you would like to see. You want to watch a story, you can swipe and move on, and you put it out there. Is it necessarily going to work and be successful? Who knows, right? Like maybe this is all just a pipe dream. Maybe at the end of the day, there is no solution. And 2 years from now, you'll find that people aren't actually watching Editorji and they don't want to watch any of this news and they don't like this and they just want to see yelling and screaming and tabloid content, in which case, fine. I mean, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to switch off everything and go and try and find a quiet beach or a hillside or somewhere and just say, I don't want to be involved in this at all. It's a non-trivial possibility. It's a very high possibility that might well be the way the world works.
Yeah.
But I felt that I owed it to myself and to try it out, right? Try it out, see whether there's a path there. You tell me how it is, or you guys can all of you, I mean, I'd encourage, obviously quick plug, and encourage all of you to download it and try it and tell me, I mean, if there's a make a path. If not, and if groups like yours say, no, it's not really giving us what we want, and we really would still prefer to watch a television channel where people are yelling and screaming, then that's it, right? Then you've got to say, okay, fine, this is what we're going to have.
But I think there are many of us who believe that, I mean, when Vikram and I both started our careers in television, it was a very different landscape. I mean, I remember when I was entering the profession, Vikram had earned his stripes basically covering Charare Sharif. I mean, I remember that so vividly for News Track. And, you know, television, the television industry, when we started off, was essentially about having people going out onto the field, spending that money. As resources have tightened, obviously the way we consume has changed. I think the challenges are many. And as Vikram said, I think when people are experimenting with different formats, the answers will hopefully at some point show up. But it's very interesting to me that, you know, years after, and this is right, Vikram, a decade after the whole TAM and Nielsen and BARC conversation happened, that we're actually having this conversation in the public sphere, that the question about television ratings isn't one in TV newsrooms. It is actually stepped outside amongst the larger public. And so there might actually be some good that comes out of this. We've completely run out of time. But Mr. Quraishi, Vikram, thank you both so much for agreeing to do this together. I know that we both sort of set it up between two different departments at the university, but I'm so glad that we could do this together, because I think it also, Gilles, reflects the sort of interdisciplinary thinking that we like to bring to our students. I mean, what better way to have showcased that than this event? So thank you both very much for agreeing to be a part of this.